I want to say that one of the questions that I get a lot is, I would like to stop spending at the moment my next dollar becomes unprofitable. Okay? The moment my next dollar becomes unprofitable, that's where I'd like to stop. That's what the max contribution margin point is. It's the moment in which the next dollar becomes unprofitable. And you can see this, right? So if we say, I want to maximize month one contribution margin, 80,147, the second I increase spend at a 157, I've deteriorated contribution dollars.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is that line. That is what is often referred to as your marginal frontier. That's it right there. So when you hear this phrase, and one of the things that would be cool to do is even like kind of put a visual line here that's like your marginal frontier is here. This is that when you tip over this line, you've now chosen to start deteriorating your month one profit in the name of some longer term gain.
This episode of the e-commerce playbook is brought to you by Yotpo. Whether you want to build trust, drive retention, or both, Yotpo makes it easy to start and impossible to ignore. Yotpo reviews help shoppers say yes faster, with AI-powered summaries and filters that answer their questions before they bounce. Perry Ellis saw a 25% jump in on-site conversions. That's not a feature, that's revenue. Yotpo loyalty keeps them coming back, with rewards that feel personal, perks they actually care about, and smart segmentation that drives real behavior. RMS Beauty boosted repeat purchase rate by 66%. Third Love saw a 56% lift in revenue per user. If you're interested in learning more, Yotpo is offering 10% off annual reviews and loyalty plans through September. Just mention Common Thread Collective on your demo to redeem this offer. Hey folks, welcome to the Ecommerce Playbook Podcast. I'm your host, Richard Gaffin, Director of Digital Product Strategy here at Common Thread Collective. And I am joined once again by Mr. Taylor Holiday, our CEO here at CTC. Taylor, what's going on today?
Nothing, man. Just got done with our, it's the first Wednesday of the month, so we're doing our little client updates. So we do a webinar with all our clients explaining all the things that are coming in the month ahead. So got some exciting stuff. You podcast listeners will get it a few weeks from now. Got to give it to the paying people first. But so yeah, it's exciting to kind of look at all the things that we've got coming down the pipeline and be able to share it with people.
Awesome. Yeah. So I think what we want to talk about today is similar, or rather the same topic that we've been talking about over the last few weeks. Which is why we're good. It's good that we're cooking up something new so we can switch topics at some point. But
yeah, well, look, the reason we're going to keep talking about the spending power model is a few things. One is it's generating a lot of interest. Like I think it's clear that people have a need for this. They want to better understand the decisions they're making about what their budgets are and why. Like that's just like, and two is that this moment in particular is like the highest value realization of that idea, right? You're going to spend more money over the next 90 days than you will probably the rest of the year. So being clear on that decision is worth more now than it is in any other time. So the fact that we're offering a free version of this model is like insane value. That's like, why would you not get a free spending model? Like what would be the reason not to take it is kind of the idea here. So I want to continue to show you angles of value that it can be used to bring. If you go back and listen to the last 3 episodes, we've gone through a number of them. We've got 2 more that we're going to go through, one of which today is this idea of the incremental value of the next dollar of spend and how to sort of wrap your mind around that not all dollars in produce the same dollars out.
That's right. So just to clarify then, like obviously Taylor just mentioned the offer, but in case this is the first time you're tuning into this, we're offering free spending power models, spend and AMER models to select 8 and 9 figure brands over the next little while. This is, like Taylor said, there's no reason not to do this. If you're a brand that qualifies, this is going to give you a added layer of clarity to what's going to happen over the next few months that I think is absolutely critical for this Q4. So let's kind of jump into what we want to focus on.
And it's just
today.
really cool to see. Like again, it's like no risk to be having someone do a bunch of cool data science for you and check it out.
Exactly. At the very least, you're going to learn something genuinely new about your business.
That's right.
Okay, so let's just jump into it then. So this is a topic we touched a little bit on, I think, last time we spoke about this, which is the incrementality or the incremental AMER, how this spending power model reveals that to you. And the idea there is that the first dollar you spend and the 100,000th dollar you spend will not be worth the same to you. So Taylor, let's break down exactly what that means.
Yeah, so I'm going to share my screen, and if you're following along at home, in the car, I'll do my best to verbalize what I'm looking at. But if you're on YouTube, bonus, you're getting some cool visuals today. They're going to help me explain this. Okay, so with the spending power model, we've been talking a lot about this idea of understanding the individual budget number that you want. So the total budget. So I want to spend $107,000 at a 3.5 AMER. That's my goal for the month. But I think sometimes what gets lost in understanding this idea is that $1 that you spend in advertising and $100,000 do not produce the same yield. So the other phrase for the spend in AMER model is a yield curve. It's this idea that every dollar in is going to degrade in return at some level of efficiency. Now, it's not necessarily going to be perfect in this way. In reality, it might be a little bit more jagged in its realization of value. All these scatter points represent individual months of spend on the x-axis and AMER, or new customer revenue, divided by spend on the y-axis. So you can see this sort of plot, and there's a seasonality component to it. And then if I highlight the yellow, you get a modeled level of return for that. Now, in this case, someone went in and was looking at what it would be like 25% over model, which is a cool feature of the tool, is that I can actually say, like, if I want to outperform the model, I can just adjust that line. So we're going to go back to 0, the actual base case for the model. You'll see there much closer to the actual dots. And so you can see for the period of month I've selected, there is the selected moment. There's the modeled line. If I just look at it itself, there was last year's performance. This is the historical set of dots. And then here's the point that I currently have selected for this month. Now, what I want to illustrate is that we can pick lots of different points along this line, right? And we've talked about this before. I could pick, show me the point on the line that maximizes my revenue, new customer revenue, at break even. So $0 of contribution margin. And you'll see down here, that's $244,000 at a 155, generating $380,000 in revenue at basically $100 of contribution margin, basically total break even. The point beyond this is where you would go negative, right? I could also look at the sort of opposite of that, which is like, what's the maximum contribution margin on it that I could generate in this first month on this spend? So that would be $80,000 of ad spend at a 3.06 AMER. So a lot less revenue, but a lot more contribution dollars. Okay. Now, the third option is to optimize for lifetime contribution margin. And you can see that this brand has a really good LTV, a 3.5 multiplier on 105 AOV. So $360 of lifetime value. So you're going to get your max lifetime contribution margin being much closer to your max revenue number, right? That makes sense, right? The bigger your LTV is, the more it's going to make sense to spend all the way up to break even or even past it potentially for a business, okay? Right. But what I want to focus on today, because we've covered some of that, is this column right here, incremental AMER, incremental CAC. And what this is showing is basically the slope of the line. It's the next dot down the line, basically. And so it shows you, as you move up this $2,000 of spend, what is the incremental change in efficiency from this point to this point, from this point to this point. And what that means is that you can imagine that this tranche of spend is blending down your overall, or the incremental efficiency. So if the overall efficiency of this tranche, 103,000, is 271, and at 108 it drops to 264, that means that this $5,000 was spent at a 1.17. So you see how that's answering this question of the next tranche of spend, what is the efficiency of that spend, right? So does that make sense? So you can see that the $5,000, this is what happens to the blended average. This is the return on that specific tranche of spend.
Right. That makes sense. So that 5K is basically break even at this point.
Well, worse, right? Because if break even is way down here at a 155, if I'm spending at a 117, I am generating negative contribution margin in the name of more revenue, in the name of more lifetime contribution, but at the cost, and you can even see it, of first month's contribution. So from 80 down to 76, right? So I'm actually deteriorating contribution margin in month 1, increasing on the other side here contribution margin in the lifetime, because the number of orders is going up as well. So I'm increasing my customers, I'm increasing my revenue, I'm decreasing my short-term profitability, I'm increasing my long-term profitability. Make sense?
Yeah. So this gives clarity then, of course, on like what we've been talking about in terms of each tranche of spend has its own efficiency that degrades as you kind of grows. But then we also, what you're pointing out is we have sort of three options or three lenses through which to view that. One is max revenue, one is maximizing contribution margin, one is maximizing lifetime contribution margin. So
Right.
I'd like to take that and segue into like the sort of use cases of each one of these things, right?
That's
like
right.
What circumstance do you want to maximize one over the other?
Great question. So first, I want to say that one of the questions that I get a lot is, I would like to stop spending at the moment my next dollar becomes unprofitable. Okay? The moment my next dollar becomes unprofitable, that's where I'd like to stop. That's what the max contribution margin point is. It's the moment in which the next dollar becomes unprofitable. And you can see this, right? So if we say, I want to maximize month one contribution margin, 80,147. The second I increase spend at a 157, I've deteriorated contribution dollars.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is that line. That is what is often referred to as your marginal frontier. That's it right there. So when you hear this phrase, and one of the things that would be cool to do is even like kind of put a visual line here that's like your marginal frontier is here. This is that when you tip over this line, you've now chosen to start deteriorating your month one profit in the name of some longer term gain.
Right.
So why would you want to do that? Okay. Well, there's a bunch of reasons. If you always invested under the purest thesis of capital allocation, then what you would do is you would always maximize the return on invested capital in the window at which you're creating an obligation for return. So like, let's say it's a year, then you would always maximize for lifetime contribution margin at a 1 year. You would go to 1 year and you would maximize to that point. You would calculate this and you would say, all right, this is the highest and best use of my capital on a 1 year basis is to spend $138,000 to generate $222 of contribution margin, which is over 100% return on invested capital, right? Like that's a really good use of money. Now, all of this depends on the reason people don't behave that way. They just don't always allocate to the purest is because they have short-term cash needs. They have top-line revenue goals. The calendar year defines a game that your EBITDA is measured in. So in other words, like as we get towards the end of this year, a lot of people don't want to trade November profitability for next year's margin, right? So a lot of times they're getting to the end of the year. They have some profit expectation that's in a budget that's under obligation. And so they're looking to, in particular in Q4, maximize the realization of value today. And that takes them to this max contribution margin number, which is much less spend than people realize in most cases.
Right.
Want more conversions? More repeat purchases? Of course you do. The trick is picking a provider that helps you do more with less. Yotpo reviews help shoppers say yes faster, with AI-powered summaries and filters that answer their questions before they bounce, driving real results like Perry Ellis's 25% jump in on-site conversions. And Yotpo Loyalty keeps those shoppers coming back with rewards that feel personal, perks they actually care about, and smart segmentation that inspires action, fueling outcomes like RMS Beauty's 66% boost in repeat purchase rate and Third Love's 56% lift in revenue per user. Interested in learning more? Yotpo is offering 10% off annual reviews and loyalty plans through September. Just mention Common Thread Collective on your demo.
If brands are looking to maximize contribution margin, they're almost all in month one, they're almost always overspending Q4. So this just depends on what is your business strategy. And this is where we talk about all the time. If you want to execute a great marketing plan, and if you as a media buyer want to do this well, it starts in the boardroom. It starts in the shareholder meeting where you're defining the financial realities of the business that then can flow down into this kind of decision making. And without those things being connected, you will have people wandering off to different places.
Mm. Right. So basically, like what you want to do, or a way we could simplify that is in the boardroom, you want a simple answer to the question, which of these three things do we want to maximize over what window of time?
Well, the way it's really going to be framed is what's the financial goal for the year? That's just how business operates. It operates in these segments of, for 2025, we have some top line and bottom line goal that somebody's expecting you to hit. bonuses are paid that way, distributions are paid that way, the IRS taxes you that way. Like the game is just really organized in these calendar years. And so likely that's the first place that governs it. Now, if you're an individual proprietor, you own 100% of your business, then maybe you have less of that kind of obligation. But for 95% of business owners, the 2025 financial goal is the governing barometer here that should be used to make this decision. Now, in many cases, we are coming in and helping people to sort of like let go of that, to try and reset the health of the business on a longer term horizon, to be more aggressive, to restart a growth engine. Like, so it really depends on where you're at as a business, what the goal is. But without that conversation, you can't possibly make this decision.
Right. So, yeah, right. We're helping people with this twofold. One is maybe defining the goal. The other is, if the goal is defined, showing them how to actually execute against it. So you'd mentioned before that like the most common scenario when people come in is they discover that they have been overspending against whatever goal that they had set for themselves before. What are like some other scenarios that you discover using these tools?
I think that the understanding of what is the cost of revenue growth. So let's say it's the opposite. Let's say you're down on top line revenue, and we say to you, okay, well, the problem is your new customer revenue file is shrinking. And so you need to restart your growth of your new customer revenue. You're going to have to invest in that for a while. And then eventually you'll be able to start to realize more of that latent existing customer revenue that's offsetting, let's say, break even new customer acquisition. And so to be able to say like, hey, if we want to go after max new customer revenue, it's going to come at the expense of $280,000 of contribution margin in whatever period that we might be after. Is that okay with you? And can you afford that? And if so, then we should be more aggressive in this pursuit in this time, because it's going to have the best long-term growth opportunity for the business, especially if you have this much LTV. Now, it's very different if you're like a hard goods business with very little LTV. But in most cases, like maximizing lifetime contribution or maximizing revenue are going to be good decisions for high LTV businesses. And again, this is why we come up with a sort of golden rule that if your returning customer contribution margin can cover OpEx, then you can fund fast growth because you can be running that at break even or a slight loss. So these are all just different business scenarios that like, and this is where like, when people think about like, is setting a media budget an easy task? No, it's actually really not. It requires an intimate knowledge of the choices on hand. That's what the model provides, and their implications on the financial realities of the business. Most marketers are not equipped to help you work through that.
Mm-hmm. Right. No, I think like that kind of goes back to our point that we've been making over the last few episodes about the clarity or the types of clarity that this provides. So regardless of whether or not you have this tool or not, you have to make these decisions. Most people are making these decisions as almost a complete shot in the dark. And what this does is it gives you maybe for the first time some illumination to what needs to happen. I think like if you scroll down to our, I think this is such like an interestingly stark table here, because you see the max contribution margin. You spend, what is that?
67,000?
67K to generate 53.5K bottom line, right? Then if you spend 68K, that number will fall. And we can show you that that's going down and down and down and down. And so at the end of the day, you're going to have less money in your pocket as a result of having put more effort and more budget into this thing. And so you have to make a decision about what exactly.
Yeah. And really you're deciding, do I want to spend an extra $121,000 to generate an extra $111,000 in month one? Like that, and understanding that that's the choice on hand. But what it does is it produces $23,000 more dollars over the course of a year. Well, is that a worthwhile trade? I don't know if it is. Right? Like the delta in these isn't large enough on a lifetime basis, I think, to play with this kind of risk. This tends to be, because the other thing that this causes is this makes next year's year over year comp harder. Because the likelihood is that this, without some significant change in the underlying product set, it's going to be harder to produce the same efficiency next year. You're going to be further out on the customer curve. There's going to be likely more customer adoption. So when you redline this year, the other problem you're creating is is complexity to next year's comp. So if you can play the game at this level, well, then there's room, if you need to be more efficient or if the degradation falls a little, to still comp up without much sacrifice to the top or to the bottom line. And that's really important to think about over time. The other thing that we can do, and I'm going to show you, this is a little teaser for how these models interact. You don't get this part for free, but if you work with us on a profit system, you would, is that once you pick a point on the curve, it actually has an effect on a secondary metric, which is your returning customer model, right? So we can sync the results from your new customer model and look at the implications on your returning customer revenue as well. And this is how we get to the overall P&L, is to say, okay, if I updated that, how is that going to affect my returning customer revenue as well? And so that's really the game, is we're building a full P&L here. And this is just one part of the stack of revenue. It's a really important one. And for some brands, it might be 80 or 90% of the revenue, but for other brands, it might only be 30% of the revenue. Yeah. So it really depends as well.
Okay. Well, one thing I wanted to hit before we move on is just maybe it strikes me as like being an incredibly complex decision process, or a very difficult thing to parse out how you balance the three variables we're talking about, or the three types of goals: the contribution margin, lifetime contribution margin, overall revenue. Are there any like tips that you have, or ways that you've seen this go? Like, what are the things that you need to evaluate to kind of understand where you need to land within those three?
I think what happens is that when you don't think like this, the transition to thinking like this and understanding the options and the relationships is it's a maturing of the business from like, we're just trying to spend as much as we can and generate the most we can. Like, that tends to be the enthusiasm of early days. But once you get here, you can't go back. Like, it becomes so empowering to understand the choices, and you feel in control suddenly. Oh, big PO coming, big cash outlay for XYZ reason. I have choices about what to do with my business and what the corresponding impacts are. And then I can document that and realize that when I come back next year, because I have my entire marketing calendar indexed. I know everything that got me here, and I know why the model is what it is. I know what I would need to do to beat it. I know how to change it, and all these different elements, that it becomes incredibly empowering to realize that what deep, intimate financial knowledge helps you to do is to understand how to move your business in the direction you want it. And sometimes to understand why you need to make dramatic changes, because there is not the yield that you need in the system right now. And so you need to change something. That can be equally as empowering. Again, good information begets good inspiration. That's true creatively. It's true in finance as well.
That's right. Okay, cool. Let's keep rolling here then. So what else does this reveal?
So I think we talked about this idea of the next dollar in, next dollar out as being the question that everybody has, is like that next tranche of spend. Where do I go with it? Okay. The other thing that you'll notice is that, did you happen to notice, Richard, what the difference was in the spend gaps in the last model? Like where it was
like 5K.
Yeah.
Something like that.
And so the what that illustrates is that the slope of the line for everybody is not the same. And this is where we talked about like spending power. This was the original framing of that term was basically, how flat is your line? In other words, how quickly does your efficiency degrade as you increase spend? And what you'll find is that the best brands in the world, the ones that have really great brand quality, that are able to spend lots and lots of money, what you'll see is that their line gets really flat. Like, it starts to look like, as you increase spend, efficiency doesn't degrade that quickly, right? So you can basically say this brand, it's like a 10-to-1 relationship. It's $10,000 for every incremental dollar of CAC. Okay, so you see that 400,000 to 410 is basically one incremental dollar of CAC. Okay, so now if I go back and look at the last business we were looking at, you'll notice this is $5,000 for one incremental dollar of CAC. So half the spending power, right? So this brand has half the spending power. So what do we mean when we say spending power? How much can you increase your spend before CAC degrades $1? That's the metric. So the last brand was a 10. This one's a 5. The best I've seen has been as high as 20 in some cases. A lot of brands, it's low. It's like 2, right? And that is the idea of spending power. Mm-hmm. How many thousands of dollars can you increase your monthly spend before CAC degrades $1? Yeah. And that's the idea, is that you want that line to be as flat as possible. And you do that through the biggest TAM, with the greatest brand, with the most awesome creative, or all the ways in which you flatten the slope of that line and increase your spending power.
So talk to me about the utility of that metric. So is it like this is just interesting information to have. Like, wow, I can pat myself on the back. Or, the gap between our tranches of spend is like $20,000 or something like that.
No, it's your scale. It's how fast you can grow. It's how fast you can grow. What you'll notice is that if you have a lot of spending power, these businesses are growing 30, 40, 50, 60, 70% because they can keep increasing spend month over month over month without it degrading to a point where it's not profitable anymore. Mm-hmm. And so the businesses that are growing the fastest tend to have the highest spending power. And they usually, it's often just represented by the TAM, the size of the market that you're serving and your product's potential to reach it, and the quality of the creative. Like, how diverse is it? How many channels are you able to drive from? Like, how many sources of revenue realization are they, and how efficient are you? So those are all different pieces of consideration. But spending power, like when we do, we've talked about if we ever update the GQ score, like it's one of the key metrics, right? Is that it's the right now in GQ score, it's all ratios, but this is a volume metric. It like shows you power. It shows you it's better to be growing a lot, not just a lot of percentages, right? So the volume matters a lot, and that's what spending power tries to illustrate for you. And so there's also this question. One of the things we want to produce at some point is a benchmark spending power report that allows people to see, like, what is my business's growth rate potential? Well, it's related to your spending power. And so part of this is like, when you think about the kinds of brands that do have great TAM and these other elements, well, maybe I don't have that. Okay, what do I need to do? This is maybe now where I need to think about product extension or these other things as illustrative of ways that you can fix that problem.
Gotcha. So, I mean, it seems like it's clear that like this spending power sort of metric, however we sort of define what that is, that reveals to you either, oh, interesting, I could be pushing spend a lot more than I thought I would, or I clearly have some sort of like brand equity, like creative quality thing that I need to work on in order to increase. I'm just trying to think through.
Sometimes it's like, hey, you have a long ways to go still. In some cases, it's you've already grown a lot. And why have you been able to do that? Like, so it just depends on where you're at in the cycle of it, but it's illustrative. Usually if we come to us and they're like a big, fast growing business, we'll see that, oh, like you have a lot of spending power. Like you've been able to increase your spend substantially without decreasing your CAC. Like, or alternatively, we see the opposite sometimes where you tried to scale and it just fell off a cliff. Like the slope of your line is like this. The second you pushed up at all, it just disappeared. And that's where you go, okay, well, what's happening here? Is this a really small TAM? Do I have bad creative? Is the offer poor? Like, what is there immense competition? Why the second I try and push up at all, does it degrade so fast? And I think that's kind of like the illustration of, hey, there's some underlying issue here to solve that isn't just about make the budget bigger next month.
Right. Cool. Well, if you want to discover your spending power, discover the incremental, let's say
your marginal front. Let me take you to your marginal frontier. Right. Let me give you your spending power, and we're going to do it for freaking free, for $0. Incredible. Show up and let us just give you some cool data to look at and understand about your business.
That's right. As Taylor said at the top, there is no reason not to do this if you are an 8- and 9-figure business. So please get in touch, commonthreadco.com, hit that hire us button. Let us know that you want to chat. We would love to talk to you about this. Taylor, anything else you want to hit on this?
No, that's it. We've got one more. Over the next couple of weeks, we got a case study of a customer who's going to talk to you about, like, okay, how is this actually playing out in real life in their business? They're going to come and share a little bit about how it's affected them. And then we're going to talk about seasonality and how spending power is related to seasonality in very dramatic ways. Luke's going to be on for that. I'm going to be out for a couple of weeks, going up to an accounting conference.
Wow, fun.
In the woods of Toronto to
Those
speak
are your
and
favorite.
share.
Those are your favorite, even though you might not think.
I'd rather be the only marketer in an accounting conference than a marketer amidst thousands of marketers, you know.
That makes so much sense.
Also, Commerce Roundtable, I'll be there at the end of the month, so come hang, say what's up.
Cool, folks. All right, lots to look forward to. All right, everybody, we will talk to you next time. See y'all.